In Java, exceptions are objects that represent exceptional conditions or errors that occur during the execution of a program. Exceptions in Java are based on a class hierarchy, with the root class being the throwable class. So there are two types of exceptions in Java. We have checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. Let us look at checked exceptions. Checked exceptions are a type of exception that the compiler requires the programmer to handle using a try or catch block, or else you can declare them in the method signature using the throws clause. Okay, and you have to understand that checked exceptions are checked at compile time, meaning that the compiler will force you to handle those exceptions. Okay, so in this program I have a very simple class here, and it says unchecked, but I don't want to deal with the unchecked first, so I'm going to deal with the checked programs. Okay, and I just want us to observe what I have here. I'm going to close this, and as you can see, this is just a program that is trying to read a file, and this file currently it's in my folder here. It's in the project folder here, so the path has been specified here. So what happens when we try to read this file? You have to understand that the buffered reader class throws an IO exception. Okay, so we have to handle that IO exception. In fact, the compiler will enforce us to handle that exception. All right, but let me first of all run this program so that we may understand what I'm talking about. So right now there is no error printed, and we have this in the console. We have hello there in the console. Okay, so we know that the program is running up to this point. Okay, so we don't have any errors, and the file reading process was successful, and you can see this is the content of the file. So you expected hello there, and this is the message that we got. Okay, so that was expected. But what happens when we don't have this file in the correct folder? That meaning that we don't have the correct file. Obviously, the buffered reader is going to throw the IO exception, and that IO exception is going to be handled using this catch block here. Okay, I'm also going to explain what this finally means. Okay, so let me screw up with the file name. Okay, meaning that I don't have such a file in the program. I just give it funny name here. I don't have any file like that. So now if I run the same program, I'm going to control save. If I run the same program, now you can see an error occurred while reading the file, and it says source/start, the system cannot find the specified path. So there was an IO exception that occurred, and it was handled successfully using the catch block. That is why we have this part here. But what happens if an error occurs and it's not even related to the file itself? Let's say it's related to the reader. Either way, we have to close that reader, and we have to handle such an exception. That is why we have the finary block here. And as you can see, the finary block, we still have a try and catch, right? So we are just saying that close the file in the finary block to ensure it's always closed. So we have to avoid the resource risks. We have to close this file. We have to close the reader, the file reader, and also if we had an error closing the file reader, again we catch that error here, right? But I wanted to emphasize something, that checked exceptions, actually the compiler is going to force you to handle those exceptions. So I have this, I'm trying to read this file here, but what happens if I just remove this? I'm just going to remove the catch block and the finary block, the finary as well. I just want to show you that this is not optional. You must implement this. Okay, all right, so you see it already has an error. unhandled exception, right? File not found. We have an unhandled IO exception, and that is a file not found exception, right? So we have not been able to implement that, and obviously it will insist that you have that handled. Okay, I'm just going to take back the program to the way it was. Okay, but I hope you get the point. But let us look at the unchecked exceptions, whereby it differs from this slightly. All right, but before that, maybe I should give you some examples of checked exceptions, which include of course the IO exception that we have talked about here. We have the SQL exception, we have the class not found exception and interrupted exception. Also you have the pass exception. You should also note that when using methods or APIs that through these checked exceptions, it is a requirement that you implement the error handling using the try catch blocks, or use even the throws clause to propagate the errors. Okay, but let's take a look at unchecked exceptions. Again, I have a file here, and this is it's unchecked. It's a simple program as well. So it says it's just trying to perform an arithmetic operation, and that arithmetic operation is from this method here that takes a number and a divisor. Okay, so it takes the dividend and divides that by the given divisor, right? So we know that an arithmetic exception will be thrown in this case. That is, if the divisor is 0, okay? Because you cannot divide a number by 0, right? It's going to, at least in Java, it's going to throw an error, okay? So let's say that we have this try and catch block here, okay? But is this necessary? It's not even necessary. Before I run the program, maybe I should just explain a few points about unchecked exceptions in Java. And of course, they are also known as runtime exceptions, and they do not need to be declared or caught explicitly. Remember, for the checked exceptions, we had to catch them explicitly. That means we had actually to write some code to catch those errors. But as you can see here, if I run this program for now, of course I'm having the error printed here in a nice way, but that's because I used a try and catch block. But remember, we don't have to. This is now explicit catching of those errors, but we don't need to do this in unchecked exceptions. And so I can just delete this and notice there is not an error. The program will still run. It's not like the checked expressions when we move the try and catch block. That could not have run. But here, we're able to run this even after removing those blocks, okay? But in this case, it's still going to throw an error, but it's not in a very nice way, okay? So it's always good to handle the errors gracefully, even if you are not required to do so, by again using a try and catch block, meaning you anticipate the error could be there, and so at least you've done something about it. Unchecked expressions are not checked by the compiler at compile time, okay? That's something else to note. These exceptions can occur during the execution of a program and indicate programming errors or unexpected conditions that are generally beyond your control as a programmer, right? So examples of unchecked exceptions: null pointer exception, that's a very famous one; illegal argument exception, array index out of bounds exception, illegal state exception, arithmetic exception like the one that we've handled here, and then the class exceptions, right? Unchecked exceptions usually indicate programming mistakes, okay, or maybe unexpected conditions that should be ideally fixed during development, right? And also what you should know is that these exceptions will not be checked by the compiler, okay? You are not required to handle them explicitly using the try and catch block, or using the throws signature, okay? So I hope you understand, you've understood the differences between the checked and unchecked exceptions in Java. Just a recap, we've said exceptions are a way to handle expected or unexpected conditions which may be erroneous in a Java program, and there are two types of exceptions. We have checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions. The main difference between checked exceptions and unchecked exceptions is that the programmer, you are required to handle the errors explicitly, okay, using the try and catch block, or propagate the same using the draw scrolls, right? While in unchecked exceptions, you are not required to handle these errors explicitly, okay, and the errors will not be the errors will not be caught at the errors will not be thrown at compile time, unlike with the checked exceptions. If you like this type of video, support my work by liking and subscribing. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.